Morning, everybody. Let's start. Now, today we are supposed to start with environment and ecology. So, let's start with environment and ecology. And first of all, let's see what we have in your main syllabus. Now, as far as main syllabus is concerned, it includes what? It includes conservation, it includes environmental pollution and degradation, and it also includes EIA, it also includes disaster management. But as far as preliminary examination syllabus is concerned, it's not well defined, it's almost includes everything. Now, since they have mentioned environmental degradation and pollution, it means that they have mentioned everything in your syllabus, because global warming and climate change is a type of environmental degradation itself. Ozone layer is a type of environmental degradation itself. Desertification is a type of environmental degradation itself. Oceanic acidification is a type of environmental degradation itself. And as far as preliminary examination syllabus is concerned, it's not well defined. It almost includes everything. And today we'll start with, first of all, the fundamentals of environment. So let's include the terminology. But see, the questions which are asked generally in your mains or preliminary examination, they happen to be more of contemporary type. So we'll try to deal with the concepts also, but we'll try to inculcate more and more contemporary inputs in that. So let's start first of all with the fundamentals of environment. So first complete the terminology. Let's deal after that with the principles of ecology. And then, since conservation is a part of your syllabus, let's cover up biodiversity hotspots, biodiversity mega hotspots, eco-sensitive zones, biosphere reserves, national park, wildlife sanctuaries. And then we start with the more famous topics like your ozone layer depletion, global warming and climate change. So let's cover up all those things one by one. Fine. So let's start. Now, first of all, and see, whatever we teach today, whatever we discuss today, a test would be conducted tomorrow. Now, the test would be sent to your portal, to you, and it's not that you would be getting marks on that. Now, the thing is that with the help of these tests, we would be revising the concepts, what we have discussed. So, whatever today we have discussed, a test would be conducted tomorrow on that. Fine. And we'll discuss on the board itself the different types of tests which I would be sending to you. You'll solve those questions and we'll discuss on the board itself. Fine. Every day let's have 1 or 2 tests, objective test. And the more that you know at KSG that when we finish the portion, we have a subjective test also which is called as POD. So first of all, let's start the terminology, the fundamentals of environment, and one by one let's cover up all the terms. Fine. In between, suppose if there is any contemporary issue, every day we like to inculcate one contemporary issue in your discussion, so that would be better. Fine. So let's deal with that. And today let's start with, first of all, that what is biosphere? Now see, if suppose this is the surface of the earth, if we talk about biosphere, we say that the extent of biosphere from the surface of the earth into the atmosphere is to a stretch of about 8 kilometers. That's the stretch of biosphere. So it means that the lower lying part of atmosphere is a part of biosphere. It includes the lithosphere, that's the land surface. It also includes, now in lithosphere, it can go to a depth of about 2 kilometers. It also includes the hydrosphere. And we can see in hydrosphere, it can go to a depth of about 9 kilometers. That's the stretch of biosphere. In atmosphere, it is to a height of about 8 kilometers. In lithosphere, it can go to a depth of about 2 kilometers. In hydrosphere, it can go to a depth of about 9 kilometers. Now, this 2 kilometers, when we say lithosphere 2 kilometers, a depth of about 2 kilometers, it means that this area is devoid of water. This is not hydrosphere, but that part of lithosphere where microorganisms would be present. Where microorganisms would be present. And when we talk about biosphere, we say that biosphere would be referred to as what? It would be referred to as the organic world. Biosphere would be called as what? Biosphere would be called as that part of the earth where organisms are present. Biosphere also would be referred to as yes, the book provided by, apart from the notes. First of all, you will emphasize on the notes, and just after the notes, you can look into the book. Now, biosphere would be referred to as what? It is referred to as a narrow zone of contact between the land, water and air. So, in that way, biosphere can be defined. So, the keywords are what? One is that biosphere can be called as the organic world. Second is what? Biosphere is that part of the earth where organisms are present. And third, I have said that biosphere happens to be a narrow zone of contact between land, water and air. So, that's how biosphere can be defined. But as far as biosphere is concerned, we can see that biosphere would be having three components. Biosphere would be having three components. One would be called as abiotic component. Second would be called as biotic component. And third would be called as energy component. So, abiotic component would be the non-living component. And non-living component here includes what? It includes the atmosphere, lithosphere and the hydrosphere. Biotic component includes plants, animals and microorganisms. And energy component means the source of energy. So, there are three components of biosphere. But see, when we talk about abiotic component, that land, water and air are abiotic component, some perception is also that temperature, wind can be regarded as a biotic component also. And when we are talking about biotic component means what? Biotic component means plants, animals and microorganisms. Now, everybody knows that plants are responsible for performing photosynthesis. They would be called as what? They would be called as autotrophs. And autotrophs, why? Because they manufacture their own food. They would be also called as primary producers of the food chain. And why primary producers of the food chain? Because plants, when they manufacture their own food, they would be consumed by herbivores and herbivore by carnivore. So, food chain would be constituted where we can see plants happen to be at the bottom of the food chain. Clear? So, they would be called as primary producers of the food chain. They would be called as autotrophs. But when we are talking about, it's not that only and only plants are responsible for performing photosynthesis. Only and only plants are responsible. Now, photosynthesis can not only be performed by plants, but it's also performed by what? It's also performed by some bacteria. And these bacteria, for example, cyanobacteria, which do have photosynthetic pigment present in them, would be responsible for performing photosynthesis. Or suppose we talk about not only cyanobacteria we talk about, but we say that algae are responsible for performing photosynthesis also. So, algae are also responsible for performing photosynthesis, and there are many algae. Modified root systems are also responsible for performing photosynthesis. When we talk about algae, we can see that in India, there are 936 varieties of algae which are present near the coastal area of India. And among them, more than 300 varieties of algae are present in the coastal areas of Tamil Nadu. So, maximum for one state is what? It's the Tamil Nadu. Clear? Maximum for one state is Tamil Nadu. And different types of algae are there. For example, there is red algae. Now, red algae is used for making of agar sticks. Then there is also brown algae. Brown algae is used for making of liquid fertilizers. So, red algae is there, brown algae is there. So, these are the algae. And also, there are two algae which should be taken a note of. One algae is called as what? One algae is referred to as diatoms. diatoms. Now in UPSC they have asked you question on diatoms. So we can see that diatoms are what? Diatoms are algae which are present in abundance, and they are present in water bodies. They are present in water bodies because 1/4 of the entire biomass of Earth is made up of diatoms. Now when we say biomass, biomass is the dry organic weight. Dry organic weight. Suppose when you are talking about that plants perform photosynthesis, what plants are responsible for manufacturing? Plants are responsible for making the carbon compounds, organic matters like polysaccharides or cellulose. These are made by the plants. So these are carbon compound, these are natural organic matter which is produced by the plant. So when we say biomass, for example, dry leaf is nothing but biomass. So any kind of dry organic weight would be called as what? It would be referred to as biomass. So when we are saying that diatoms constitute roughly about 1/4 of the entire biomass of Earth, 1/4 of entire biomass of Earth, it means that they are present in abundance. Clear? They are present in abundance. Second is what? They are responsible for performing photosynthesis. So they are autotrophs. They are autotrophs. They are primary producers of the food chain. Clear? They are primary producers of the food chain. They are autotrophs. 1/4 of the entire biomass of Earth is made up of diatoms only. And if you talk about exclusively about this kind of algae, which is diatoms, there are 1 lakh shapes of diatom. 1 lakh shapes of diatom. And there are 2 conditionalities which are required for their survival. One conditionality which is required for their survival is what? It is the solar radiation. And the second conditionality which is required for their survival is what? Not only solar radiation is required. Second is that the second conditionality is moisture, because diatoms would be always and always present in water bodies. They would be always present in water bodies. When we talk about Zoox anthellae, that's another type of algae. One we have discussed is diatoms, and second is Zoox anthellae. Now this is a type of algae which is present where? Which is also present in water bodies. Now they happen to be in a symbiotic relationship with what? They happen to be in a symbiotic relationship with corals. Corals are invertebrates. They are marine organisms. They are invertebrates belonging to the class of Anthrozoa. They belong to the class of Anthrozoa. So there is a symbiotic. Symbiotic means give and take relationship between the corals and this kind of algae. Give and take relationship. So what is coral responsible for giving? You would have seen reef-like structure in the coastal areas, particularly the coral reefs are present where? The coral reefs are present. So this reef-like structure is what? Coral reefs are made up of what? Calcium carbonate. And this calcium carbonate reef is secreted by whom? It is secreted by a marine organism which is called as corals. So corals are also referred to as polyps. They are marine organisms. They belong to the class of Anthrozoa. They belong to the class of Anthrozoa. And they happen to be in a symbiotic relationship with an algae. And that algae is referred to as what? That algae is referred to as Zoox anthellae. So the symbiotic relationship is what? The symbiotic relationship is that the corals are responsible for providing Zoox anthellae a protected area so that they can perform photosynthesis. Because Zoox anthellae are responsible for performing photosynthesis. And Zoox anthellae would be responsible for what? Zoox anthellae would be responsible for giving the corals the carbon compound that they required for survival, because they produce the organic matter and they are responsible for giving the corals the carbon compound that they require for their survival. Clear? So in this way, a symbiotic relationship exists between the corals and Zoox anthellae. When it is reported in the newspaper that coral bleaching takes place. Now coral bleaching does not only imply that the reefs, they turn pale due to oceanic acidification. We'll deal with that later on in global warming and climate change. But the greater implication of coral bleaching is what? That the density of zooxanthellae declines as the photosynthetic pigment present in it gets reduced. The photosynthetic pigment present in it would be getting reduced. So that's the greater implication of what is called as coral bleaching. Clear? Fine. Write down, please. Whatever we have discussed up till now, let's write down. Biosphere is referred to as the organic world. Biosphere is referred to as the organic world. It is that part of the earth. Biosphere is referred to as the organic world. It is that part of the earth where organisms are present. It's a narrow zone of contact between. It's a narrow zone of contact between land, water, and air. It's a narrow zone of contact between land, water, and air. It consists of three components. Abiotic, biotic, and energy component. Abiotic, biotic, and energy component. And no need of writing abiotic is non-living component. Understood by the name itself, it's non-living component. Biotic component is living component. No need of explaining that. Write down abiotic component includes. Abiotic component includes atmosphere, lithosphere, and hydrosphere. Includes atmosphere, lithosphere, and hydrosphere. Atmosphere, lithosphere, and hydrosphere. Biotic component includes plants, animals, and microorganisms. Biotic component includes plants, animals, and microorganisms. Plants are autotrophs. Biomass, I have to speak in Hindi. Biomass in Hindi means Jaiv Matra. Plants are autotrophs. Biotic component includes, first of all, biotic component includes plants, animals, and microorganisms. Plants are considered to be autotrophs. They are primary producer of the food chain. Plants are considered to be autotrophs. They are primary producer of the food chain. And you understand what is autotrophs. Autotrophs are those agencies which manufacture their own food. So plants are manufacturing their own food through photosynthesis. So they are called as autotrophs. They are primary producer of the food chain. Why? I have discussed that. Because they would be consumed by herbivore and herbivore by carnivore, and a food chain would be constituted. So they would be present at the bottom of the food chain. Clear? They would be present in the bottom of the food chain. So they are autotrophs and primary producers of the food chain. Right on. But photosynthesis is performed by other agencies as well. photosynthesis is performed by other agencies as well, which includes algae, some bacteria, not all, some bacteria, and modified roots. Algae, some bacteria, and modified roots. And we can see, as far as algae are concerned, there are more than 936 varieties, species of algae present near the coastal area of India. Write down. There are more than 900 species of algae present near the coastal area of India. There are more than 900 species of algae present near the coastal area of India. In fact, it is 936. And a maximum for a single state is what? Maximum for a single state in India, Tamil Nadu. Because more than 300 varieties of algae are present in Tamil Nadu. Clear? Right down, there are different types of algae. For example, red algae is used for making agar sticks. Brown algae is used for making liquid fertilizers. Brown algae is used for making liquid fertilizers. There are algae like diatoms and zoox anthellae. Diatoms are single cell. Shell algae. Shell algae means that they are having two shield-like structures. Single cell shell algae. They have, let's explain that. Two shield-like structures. And see, if they have two shield-like structure like this, that's why they are called as diatom. So di means two. So they have two shield-like structure. That's why they are called as diatoms. They have two shield-like structures. And we can see that diatoms are autotrophs, that's understood. They are primary producers of this food chain, that's understood. But as far as diatoms are concerned, they are in abundance. So 1/4 of the entire biomass of Earth is constituted by diatoms only. Write down, 1/4 of entire biomass of Earth. 1/4 of entire biomass of Earth. And biomass means the dry organic weight. Somebody has asked me what is it in Hindi. In Hindi it is called as Jaiv Matra. Clear? Jaiv Matra. And in Hindi it means what? Let me tell you. It in Hindi means Jaivik Padarthon ka bahar. So that's called as biomass. 1/4 of the entire biomass is made up of diatoms only. So they constitute 1/4 of the entire biomass. And we can see there are two factors required for their survival. Write down. There are two factors required for their survival. Moisture and sunlight. There are two factors required for their survival: moisture and sunlight. And as far as diatoms are concerned, we can see another thing, that diatoms also they have 1 lakh shapes. Write down. Diatoms have 1 lakh shapes. 1 lakh ships. So all these information about atoms. All these information about atoms. Clear? Now as far as Zunx Anthellae is concerned, Zunx Anthellae, they are algae which are in a symbiotic relationship with corals. Write down, Zunx Anthellae is an algae. Zunx Anthellae is an algae which is in a symbiotic relationship with, corals, symbiotic relationship with corals. So that's the first thing, that it is in a symbiotic relationship with corals. Now the second part of this is what, as far as Zunx Anthellae is concerned, we can see that Zunx Anthellae, corals are what? Corals are marine organisms. They are invertebrates belonging to the class of Anthrozoa. They are also referred to as polyps. Write down. Corals are invertebrates belonging to the class of Anthrozoa. Like we have a vertebral column, they do not have a vertebral column, so they would be called as invertebrates. So they are marine organisms. Corals are marine organisms. They are invertebrates belonging to the class of Anthrozoa. And the symbiotic relationship, I have explained that what is the symbiotic relationship like, because the corals are responsible for providing Zunx Anthellae a protected area so that they can perform photosynthesis. Zunx Anthellae on the other side are responsible for providing corals the carbon compounds. So a give and take relationship exists between Zunx Anthellae and corals. So there is a give and take relationship existing between Zunx Anthellae and corals. Clear? Fine. So that's another thing. And so we can see these are the examples of what? Different kinds of algae. But do remember one more thing, that we'll discuss oceanic acidification, coral bleaching later on in global warming and climate change when we discuss oceanic acidification separately. But for the time being, remember that what happens when coral bleaching takes place. First have the idea of this, and then later on we'll discuss coral bleaching and oceanic acidification. First the basics. See, when you talk about photosynthesis, we know that photosynthesis, an agency can be autotroph on the basis of photosynthesis. But can an agency be autotroph only on the basis of photosynthesis? Not at all. Can an agency be autotroph only on the basis of photosynthesis? Not at all. So what we can say is that if suppose we consider this to be the oceans, inside the oceans, we know that in the upper part of the ocean, there are phytoplanktons present and there are algae present. Now these phytoplanktons means the plant life in ocean. So phytoplankton is present. Algae are present. Algae like diatom, Zunx Anthellae, etc. are present, and all these are responsible for performing photosynthesis. So they are autotrophs on the basis of what? Autotrophs on the basis of photosynthesis. And if we consider, see, in the upper part of the ocean, suppose this part of the ocean, and this is up to suppose a depth of 300 meters. In this part of the ocean, we can see CO2 which is present in atmosphere is absorbed by the oceans. Clear? It is absorbed by the oceans. And this CO2 which is absorbed by the oceans is utilized by phytoplanktons, is utilized by algae for photosynthesis, and they would be considered as primary producers of the food chain. But absorption of CO2 is confined to the upper part of the ocean only, to a depth of about 300 meters. 300 meters. And why? Because this part of the ocean is in contact with atmosphere. And here CO2 absorption takes place, and this CO2 absorbed by the ocean would be utilized by phytoplanktons and algae for photosynthesis. It means that a food chain would be present in the upper part of the ocean mainly. A food chain would be present in the upper part of the ocean only. But we can see also that a food chain is present in the lower part of the ocean also. So in 1976, there was an experiment which was called as Deep Horizon experiment. And under the Deep Horizon experiment, it was found that food chain is not only confined to the upper part of the ocean, but also present in the lower part. So how come a food chain would be present in the lower part where no absorption of CO2 takes place? And also obstruction of solar radiation happens. So no solar radiation, because solar radiation would be obstructed by the water body, and no CO2 is present here. Now the process which takes place here, which is responsible for formation of food chain, is called as what? It is called as chemosynthesis. So here suppose this is the oceanic floor. Here we can see there are depressions like this. And in this depression, there would be accumulation of water. Accumulation of water. And this type of depressions would be called as what? These types of depressions are referred to as brine pools. Here the salinity of water is 4 to 5 times greater than average oceanic water. Clear? Salinity of water is 4 to 5 times greater than average oceanic water. And seepage of chemicals takes place from here, from the oceanic floor. Chemicals like methane, chemicals like hydrogen sulfide, they are seeping from the oceanic floor. So when they are seeping from the oceanic floor, they would be utilized by the bacteria which are present near the brine pools, and they generate natural organic matter. They generate natural organic matter. So what are these? Suppose bacteria which are present near the brine pools are utilizing the chemicals seeping from the oceanic floor to generate natural organic matter, and this process would be called as what? This process would be called as chemosynthesis. Clear? This process would be called as what? This process would be referred to as chemosynthesis. So first of all, we can conclude here that there are two types of food chain in the ocean. One in the lower part, the basis of which is what? Chemosynthesis. And one in the upper part, the basis of which is what? The basis of which is photosynthesis. So there are two types of food chain present in the ocean. One in the lower part, the basis of which is chemosynthesis, and one in the upper part, the basis of which is photosynthesis. So two types of food chain. Here we are seeing. Now, it's not only that. See, when we are talking about brine pools in environment is known for two reasons. One, it is a site of chemosynthesis that we know. And second reason is what? As far as brine pools are concerned, brine pool is an area from where we would be responsible for extracting brominated compounds. Now see, maximum damage to ozone layer is done by not CFC, but free radical catalyst. Free radical catalyst, because CFCs are never directly responsible for ozone layer damage. But when sunlight falls on CFCs, chlorine would be emitted, and this chlorine is responsible for the damage. But maximum damage to ozone layer is done by what? It is done by the free radical catalyst, which includes chlorine, bromine, OH, hydroxyl, and also NO, nitric oxide. And among the four, we can see maximum damage is done by whom? Maximum damage would be done by bromine. Maximum damage would be done by bromine. But bromine is never found in free state in atmosphere, as it is highly soluble in water. Bromine is never found in free state in atmosphere as it is highly soluble in water. So extraction of brominated compounds takes place from brine pools. Fine. So brine pool in environment is known for not only as a site of chemosynthesis, but also place from where brominated compounds are extracted. Also place from where brominated compounds would be extracted. Fine. So this is one thing that you have to know. And it's not that brine pool would be only and only found at the base of the ocean. Not at all. You cannot extract from there. But brine pools are also inland brines. For example, Sambar Lake is an inland brine pool in Rajasthan, which extends in two districts of Rajasthan. One is Nagaur and second is Jaipur. So this is an example of inland brine. You are not going to extract brine from the bromine from the brine pools which is present near the oceanic floor. It's not brown pool, it's brine pool first of all. B-R-I-N-E. See, when you are talking about, and you said that why it is salinity is 4 times than the average water. See, if this is a brine pool, this glass of water is a brine pool where the water gets accumulated, then we will say that in this it becomes more and more concentrated. And more concentrated. Why? Because deposition of water is taking place at and no evaporation is happening here. So this would be becoming more and more. The salinity level in this water would be enhancing more and more. Second thing is what? How CO2 is absorbed by oceanic water. See, CO2 is absorbed by the carbon cycle. Includes what? The carbon cycle includes the release of CO2 in atmosphere by respiration, by also fossil fuel combustion, by also volcanic eruption, it would be getting released into the atmosphere. But absorption of CO2 is by 2 big carbon sinks. And 2 big carbon sinks on Earth include what? First is the oceans. 1/3 of CO2 which is present in atmosphere due to fossil fuel combustion would be absorbed by the oceans. And second biggest carbon sink is what? Forest. Because the leaves would be utilizing it for photosynthesis. So 1/3 of CO2 which is present in atmosphere would be absorbed by the forest too. Clear? So 1/3 by oceans and 1/3 by forest. These are 2 big carbon sinks of the world. And Partha, CO2 is absorbed by oceans. How? It is absorbed by the water body. Everywhere it can be absorbed by the water body, which is a part of the carbon cycle itself. And it is utilized by the phytoplanktons and algae for photosynthesis. So they are natural absorbers of CO2. Why? Because photosynthesis need to be performed by phytoplanktons and algae which are present in abundance. Clear? And salinity level is 4 to 5 times because they are concentrated in these areas, in these pools. That's why the salinity level enhances. Fine. So that's why the salinity level would be enhancing. Now that's one process that you have to know. And what is chemosynthesis? Right on. An agency can be autotroph. An agency can continue in your the biotic component that we are discussing. An agency can be autotroph. An agency can be autotroph. Not only on the basis of photosynthesis. An agency can be autotroph, not only on the basis of photosynthesis, but also on the basis of another process, called chemosynthesis, which is performed by bacteria present near the brine pools. Carbon sinks means Amitabh carbon absorbers, which is performed by bacteria present near the brine pools inside the oceans. Inside the oceans. The process through which chemicals are utilized for generating natural organic matter. The process through which chemicals are utilized for generating natural organic matter. Chemicals are utilized for generating natural organic matter would be referred to as chemosynthesis. As such, there are two types of food chain present in the ocean. Two types of food chain present in the ocean. One in the upper part, the basis of which is photosynthesis. One in the upper part, the basis of which is photosynthesis. And second in the lower part, the basis of which is chemosynthesis. And second in the lower part, the basis of which is chemosynthesis. Second in the lower part, the basis of which is chemosynthesis. Clear? Fine. Basis of which is chemosynthesis. Is that clear? Chemosynthesis. So there are two types of food chain present in the ocean. And see, when we are discussing the oceans, inside the ocean, chemosynthesis, let's discuss another thing which is present inside the ocean also. The things which are present near the oceanic floor. We know that seepage of chemicals takes place like methane. Methane is taking place from the oceanic floor. But let's make another diagram for this. Or we can utilize here only. Let's make a more clear diagram. Suppose this is your oceans. Here is the oceanic floor. Now we know that seepage of chemicals like methane takes place from the oceanic floor. Now water has a unique characteristic. Under low temperature and high pressure, and also under extremely low temperature. I am saying that under low temperature and high pressure, and also under extremely low temperature, it would be responsible for forming what? It would be responsible for forming cage-like structure. It forms a cage-like structure. And this cage-like structure, which is formed by water, in which gas like methane gets stored, is called as what? It is called as gas hydrates. I'm repeating it. That water has a unique characteristic. Under low temperature and high pressure, and also under extremely low temperature, it would be responsible for forming what? It is responsible for forming a cage-like structure. Cage-like structure. Cage-like structure. Pinjare jaisa. In which gas like methane gets stored. Now this would be called as what? This cage-like structure in which gas like methane gets stored would be called as what? It would be referred to as gas hydrates. So we can extract these hydrates, we can disassociate them to get energy. So we would be responsible for extracting these hydrates, we would be responsible for disassociating them to derive energy. Clear? So we would be getting energy. And why? Because methane is a source of energy. We can burn methane for energy purpose. So these would be called as what? These would be called as gas hydrates. Clear? And as it's not that gas hydrates would be only confined to this part of the ocean. Gas hydrate is also present in the permafrost region. So permafrost region is what? Permafrost region is a region which is covered with ice. And the technical definition of permafrost is what? That it is a region where even the summer solar radiation is unable to thaw, unable to melt the frozen soil. So this area would be called as what? This area would be called as permafrost. It is that region where even the summer solar radiation is unable to thaw, unable to melt the frozen soil. So this area is called as what? This area is referred to as the permafrost region. Permafrost region. Now, or we can see also another definition of permafrost is what? That this area is an area where the temperature does not enhance beyond the freezing point for 2 consecutive years. So mainly it is the icy layers which is the permafrost region. For example, mountain glacier is a permafrost. Polar region is a permafrost region. But when we are talking about permafrost region, we can see formation of permafrost would be taking place at greater altitude or at greater latitude. Greater altitude means mountain glaciers. Greater latitude means what? Polar regions, the Arctic region or Antarctic region. So formation of permafrost would be taking place here mainly. And when we are talking about the permafrost region, when we talk about the permafrost region, we can see that extremely low temperature of the permafrost region would be responsible for what? Would be responsible for formation of gas hydrates. Extremely low temperature of the permafrost region would be responsible for formation of gas hydrates. Clear? Permafrost region would be responsible for formation of gas hydrates. So this also would be done. But we cannot think of extracting gas hydrates from the permafrost region. Why? Because the permafrost region is more meaningful for us because it is responsible for regulating the temperature of Earth. Now, as far as India's gas hydrate reserve is concerned, India's gas hydrate reserves include what? The Krishna Godavari basin, the Kerala Konkan basin, the Mahanadi basin. So these are regions of India's gas hydrate. Clear? Continue in the biotic component that we have discussed. One process we have discussed in between, chemosynthesis. And the other thing that we are going to discuss in that only, because we started discussing fundamentals, but we deviated to include some contemporary issues also in between, which is more meaningful for us for UPSC examination perspective. Clear? So let's cover up in all these, include that in our study as such. We'll deal with the fundamentals again. We'll again come to the energy component and plants, animals and microorganisms, but in between let's inculcate all these things. So that's meaningful. Right now, and continue in the biotic component itself. Right now, water has a unique characteristic. Water has a unique characteristic. Unique characteristic. At low temperature and high pressure, at low temperature and high pressure. See, at here the temperature is low, and here due to the volume of water the pressure is high. That's why gas hydrates at low temperature and high pressure, and also at extremely low temperature, that we are talking about the permafrost region, and also at extremely low temperature. Extremely low temperature, at low temperature and high pressure, and at extremely low temperature. Extremely low temperature. Water would be forming a cage-like structure. Water would be forming a cage-like structure. Cage-like structure. Where gases like methane, where gases like methane not gases, gas like methane, where gas like methane gets stored, gas like methane gets stored, and is referred to as, gas hydrates, and is referred to as gas hydrates, referred to as gas hydrates, referred to as gas hydrates. Clear? We can extract these hydrates and disassociate them. We can extract these hydrates and disassociate them, extract these hydrates and disassociate them for the purpose of energy, because you can break these hydrates and methane would be extracted. Now methane would be utilized for the purpose of energy, for the purpose of energy, purpose of energy. Extremely low temperature in the permafrost region, extremely low temperature in the permafrost region, yes, run of the Kutch also has gas hydrates, particularly the Campe region of Gujarat. Extremely low temperature in the permafrost region, extremely low temperature in the permafrost region, in the permafrost region is also responsible for formation of gas hydrates. Extremely low temperature in the permafrost region is also responsible for formation of gas hydrates, is also responsible for formation of gas hydrates, formation of gas hydrates. Definitely, but we cannot extract them. Why? Because no point in extracting gas hydrates from permafrost region, because this region is more meaningful for us in regulating the temperature of Earth. But India's, let's see India's gas hydrate reserves. Write down India's gas hydrate reserves include, India's gas hydrate reserves include, the Krishna Godavari basin, the Krishna Godavari basin, the Kerala Konkan basin, the Kerala Konkan basin, Gulf of Mannar, Krishna Godavari basin, the Kerala Konkan basin, Gulf of Mannar, Gulf of Mannar. So all these regions are the region where gas hydrates are present in abundance. Gulf of Mannar. The Campe region of Gujarat, the Kutch also, the Campe region of Gujarat, region of Gujarat. Clear? So the second thing that you have to know is that oceanic floor, once we have studied, is a site of chemosynthesis. But second thing that we have discussed is oceanic floor is also what? It's also region of gas hydrates. Also region of gas hydrate. Now the third thing that you have to know about the oceanic floor. Let's complete the oceanic floor here only. Suppose we talk about the ocean. This is the ocean. So near the oceanic floor, there are small sized rocks littered, rock-like structures littered. And these small sized rock-like structures which are littered near the oceanic floor, they are referred to as what? They are referred to as polymetallic nodules. Polymetallic nodules. Or they are also called as PMNs. Polymetallic nodules. They are referred to as PMNs. Clear? Polymetallic nodules or PMNs. Now what they are? See, these polymetallic nodules or PMNs, what they are made up of? They are made up of iron, nickel, cobalt, manganese. So these are present in them, and they are used for what purpose? They are used for making the batteries of smartphones and laptops. It can be made by lithium also, which is we recently found in Jammu and Kashmir. But they are made up of what? They are made up of iron, nickel, cobalt and manganese, and they are referred to as polymetallic nodules. They can be utilized for making the batteries of smartphones and laptops that we use. Clear? So that would be utilized. And that's why we say that they happen to be of economic significance, and they can be used for energy purpose. Energy purpose. Now in India, we can see that polymetallic nodules are present in the oceanic areas. The ocean basin polymetallic nodules are present. So in India, the Ministry of Earth Sciences in the year 2018 was responsible for launching a mission for this purpose. And the mission is called as the Deep Ocean Mission for extraction of polymetallic nodules. So polymetallic nodules would be extracted and they would be used for energy purpose. So for extraction of polymetallic nodules, they would be used. The Deep Ocean Mission would be used. Clear? And how they would be extracted through this mission? So in this Deep Ocean Mission, which has a location of 8,000 crore rupees, and in this mission, the objective of this mission is to develop a submersible vehicle. So submersible vehicle would be carrying 3 persons inside the ocean to a depth of about 6,000 meters for extraction of polymetallic nodules. And also the objective of this mission is what? The objective of this mission is to develop a desalination plant with the help of tidal energy. So desalination plant means what? It would be responsible for converting saline water into fresh water. So a desalination plant would be developed with the help of tidal energy, and that would be done. Clear? So that's called as what? That's called as the Deep Ocean Mission. And this Deep Ocean Mission was launched in the year 2018. For this purpose, the International Seabed Authority of the world has provided India area of 75,000 square kilometer in the central Indian Ocean basin for this purpose, for the Deep Ocean Mission. Clear? For the Deep Ocean Mission. Write down, near the oceanic floor, small sized rock-like structures are also present. Rock-like structures are also present. Which are referred to as polymetallic nodules, PMNs in short we'll write, polymetallic nodules, and they are littered on the oceanic floor. Polymetallic nodules, they are made up of iron, nickel, cobalt, manganese, iron, nickel, cobalt, manganese, and they would be utilized for economic significance. As they are used for making the batteries of smartphones and laptops, as they are used for making the batteries of smartphones and laptops. Making the batteries of smartphones and laptops. Clear? And we can see that India has launched a mission called Deep Ocean, right? Ministry of Earth Sciences of India. The Ministry of Earth Sciences of India. The Ministry of Earth Sciences of India. With an allocation of 8,000 crore rupees. With an allocation of 8,000 crore rupees. 8,000 crore rupees. In the year 2018, launched the Deep Ocean Mission. Launched the Deep Ocean Mission. Deep Ocean Mission. Launched the Deep Ocean Mission. Ocean Mission. Ministry of Earth Sciences in the year 2018 with an allocation of 8,000 crore launched the Deep Ocean Mission for extraction of PMNs, that is polymetallic nodules, for extraction of PMNs. And what would be done under this mission? What would be done under this mission? Write down. Under this mission, a submersible vehicle would be developed. A submersible vehicle would be developed. Submersible vehicle would be developed, which can carry 3 persons inside. Which can carry 3 persons inside. For extraction of polymetallic nodules, which can carry 3 persons inside for extraction of polymetallic nodules. For extraction of polymetallic nodules. Polymetallic nodules. Extraction of polymetallic nodules. So this can be done. And second thing is that another objective of this mission is what? To develop a desalination plant with the help of tidal energy. Write down. Another objective of this mission. Another objective of this mission. Is to develop a desalination plant. A desalination plant with the help of tidal energy. A desalination plant with the help of tidal energy. With the help of tidal energy. A desalination plant with the help of tidal energy. Tidal energy. Is that clear? Tidal energy. Fine. And why we are developing desalination plant? Desalination plant is developed to convert saline water into fresh water. And in India, some cities of India suffer from what is called as economic water scarcity. For example, Chennai. Chennai suffers from water scarcity, which is called as economic water scarcity. Chennai has abundance of water on one side. It's a coastal city. But that water cannot be consumed. So if this type of water scarcity is there, that water bodies are present, but either happens to be either contaminated or saline in nature, then to get fresh water, there would be a high incurrence of cost. So this kind of water scarcity would be called as what? It would be called as economic water scarcity. Clear? Economic water scarcity. So for economic water scarcity, we can see that desalination plant would be established, and that would be established with the help of tidal energy, because main cost is incurred. Why? Main cost is incurred because this process of converting saline water into fresh water is what? It is an energy intensive process. Energy intensive process. That's why high cost is incurred. Fine. So what we are doing is that we are converting fresh water, saline water into fresh water with the help of tidal energy. So if energy is required, let the energy come from renewable sources like tidal energy. So this would be for that very purpose. And this is your deep ocean mission. And one fact can be also known that India has been allocated 75,000 square kilometer in the central Indian basin for this purpose. Right now, the Ministry of Earth Sciences has been allocated. And who is allocating? International Seabed Authority. The Ministry of Earth Sciences has been allocated. The Ministry of Earth Sciences has been allocated an area of 75,000 square kilometer. An area of 75,000 square kilometer. 75,000 square kilometer. In the central Indian Ocean basin, in the central Indian Ocean basin for this purpose. In the central Indian Ocean basin for this purpose. Indian Ocean basin for this purpose. For this purpose. For this purpose. Clear? Fine. So that's all about oceans we have studied. Inside the ocean, chemosynthesis is performed. Then we have studied that what is gas hydrates near the oceanic floor. So roughly near the oceanic floor, whatever is happening, we know. And then we have studied also that what is polymetallic nodules. But we started from biosphere. So we have to return back to biosphere again. And we are dealing with the biotic component in which we have discussed only plants, autotrophs. So we haven't discussed animals and microorganisms. So let's return back to that area and let's see that animals and microorganisms can be of different types. So when you are talking about animals and microorganisms can be of different types, like they can be saprophytes, they can be parasites, they can be scavengers. So saprophytes are responsible for what? Saprophytes are responsible for decomposition of dead plants and animals. And when they are responsible for decomposition of dead plants and animals, the end product of such decomposition always is in a molecular stage. So saprophytes are responsible for that. But when we are talking about parasites, parasites are responsible. For example, saprophytes can be bacteria also, it can be earthworm also, it can be fungus also. They are responsible for decomposition of dead plants and animals. When we are talking about parasites, parasites are responsible for deriving their nutrition from the host. For example, mosquito. For them, the host is us. So they derive their nutrition from the host and they would be responsible for causing disease to them. When we talk about scavengers, scavengers are responsible for cleaning up the environment. So they clean up the environment. They are responsible for cleaning up the environment. And they also are responsible for decomposition. For example, suppose vultures. Vultures clean the environment. They would be responsible for decomposition also. When they are consuming, suppose dead cattle, they are decomposing it also. But the decomposition is not, the end product of decomposition is not in a molecular stage as such. Fine. So there is a difference between the three. Now here also we can add on contemporary issue. And that contemporary issue is of what? Of the vultures in India. So let's talk about the vultures. First mention these three things and then discuss everything about vultures in India. Whatever we know. Why they are diminishing number, what has been done, what is vulture conservation and breeding centers. Let's cover up all the things related to vultures in India at one go. And then we come to energy component. So that biosphere is completed, then we discuss some other terms. Clear? Some other terms. Let's do that. Write down animals and microorganisms. Animals and microorganisms. Animals and microorganisms can be of different types. Animals and microorganisms can be of different types. Like saprophytes, animals and microorganisms can be of different types like saprophytes, parasites, scavengers, among many. Saprophytes, parasites, scavengers, among many. Saprophytes are responsible for decomposition of dead plants and animals. Saprophytes are responsible for decomposition of dead plants and animals. And the end product of such decomposition, such decomposition is always in a molecular stage. And the end product of such decomposition is always in a molecular stage. Saprophytes are responsible for decomposition of dead plants and animals, and the end product of such decomposition is always in a molecular stage. Why we are saying always in a molecular stage, end product of such decompositions? See, when you study the nitrogen cycle, you would have studied nitrogen cycle in your school days. So when you study that, you can see that nitrogen cycle is what? Nitrogen cycle is a process through which the nitrogenous compounds are removed from the soil and they are reverted back into the soil. So this process is called as what? It is called as nitrogen cycle. So that's called as nitrogen cycle. But when we are talking about return back of nitrogenous compounds to the soil and removal of nitrogen compound. Now, removal of nitrogenous compounds from the soil takes place by many ways. It can take place by plants, green plants. It can take place by leaching. It can take place by other ways. But when we are talking about reverting nitrogenous compounds into the soil, it takes place by nitrification and nitrogen fixation. There are two processes. But before nitrification takes place, decomposition of dead plants and animals also takes place. The end product of such decomposition is what? Saprophytes are responsible for decomposition. So end product of decomposition is what? Ammonia. Ammonia is in what? Ammonia is in a molecular stage. It would be combining with a hydrogen ion from the soil to form ammonium, and then the action of nitrite and nitrate bacteria takes place so that it can be returned back to the soil. So we can see that the end product of such decomposition is always in a molecular stage. In this case, we discussed about ammonia. But when scavengers, they are responsible for eating up the dead cattle, they are also responsible for decomposition. But the end product of such decomposition cannot be in a molecular stage. Clear? The end product of such decomposition cannot be in a molecular stage. So this is another way. Fine. So we should know about these things also. Write down. Saprophytes are responsible for decomposition of dead and plants and animals, and the end product of such decomposition is always in a molecular stage. Write down. Parasites are responsible for deriving their nutrition. Parasites are responsible for deriving their nutrition from host. Deriving their nutrition from host, and would be causing disease to them. Deriving their nutrition from the host and would be causing disease to them. Parasites, scavengers are responsible for cleaning up the environment. scavengers are responsible for cleaning up the environment. Cleaning up the environment. Scavengers are responsible for cleaning up the environment. Clear? And they are also responsible for decomposition, but don't have to write all these things. Everything should not be written. Fine. Now see, from here they won't be asking questions, but they would be asking questions from where? Let's see. They would be asking questions from the diminishing number of vultures. In India, we can see 90% of, more than 90% in fact, of vultures have vanished. More than 90% of vultures have vanished in India. And the diminishing number of vultures is due to many reasons, not one reason we can say. It is due to electrocution. It is due to loss of habitat. It is due to use of pesticides. It is also mainly due to what? It is mainly due to use of diclofenac. See, we can see that in India there are region-specific reasons for diminishing number of vultures. For example, suppose in Maharashtra there was a cyclone in the year 2010, and this cyclone was called as Nisarga. Now, Nisarga cyclone was responsible for wiping out the habitation of vultures. So that was wiped out. Clear? So one can say that Nisarga cyclone was responsible for this. Fine. Wiping out the habitation of. Second was electrocution took place. Electric shocks to the vultures. Then third reason is what? That in suppose region like Kamrup district of Assam, pesticide was responsible for their diminishing number because they were used in the carcasses of animals, carcasses of cattle, and vultures feed on the carcasses of cattle. Clear? Carcasses of cattle, vultures feed on that, and because of that we can see their numbers diminished. But the main reason for this is what? The main reason for this is use of an anti-inflammatory drug, and this anti-inflammatory drug is called as diclofenac. Now this drug is used where? It is used in cattle. So we are using an anti-inflammatory drug in cattle, which is called as what? Which is called as diclofenac, and this drug is responsible for kidney failure among vultures. Kidney failure among vultures. Now see, there are two terms. One is called as bioaccumulation. Bioaccumulation means what? See, scavengers are responsible for cleaning up the environment because they eat the dead cattle. If you leave the dead cattle, it would be responsible for spread of diseases. It would be responsible for spreading contamination in the environment. Clear? So they are responsible for feeding the dead cattle. Now, what happened when we were responsible for using a drug called diclofenac? Diclofenac is used as a painkiller. We also consume diclofenac. The common painkiller consumed by us is diclofenac. So this was used among cattle. And when these dead cattle were feeded upon by diclofenac, feeded upon by vultures, diclofenac passed into the food chain. Now there are two things. One process is called as bioaccumulation. Bioaccumulation means when any kind of toxic substance or any substance, it contaminants enters the food chain, it would be called as bioaccumulation. But if it passes to the upper strata of food chain, it would be called as biomagnification. So in this case, what happened? When diclofenac was used in cattle and when vultures consumed those cattle, it passed in the upper part of the food chain. Vultures. So this would be what? This would be biomagnification. Biomagnification. And this was responsible for kidney failure among vultures. And because of that, their numbers diminished. You can see kidney failure, you can see renal failure among vultures also, which was responsible for their diminishing number as such, because of which the numbers of vultures diminished. Now, this is the main reason as such. Now, what we can say that diclofenac has been banned for use in animals in India, and we started to use alternates like aclynofenac, alternates like nimesulide, alternates like ketoprofen. So, these were used as alternates, but all these three alternates proved to be detrimental for vultures. All these three alternates that we have discussed, they proved to be what? They proved to be detrimental for vultures. Clear? Proved to be detrimental because they converted into diclofenac within hours of their administration. So, they proved to be detrimental for vultures. Clear? Although we used all these alternates. Now, there is a trend also seen. And the trend is what? That with the diminishing number of vultures, the number of cattle, the number of dogs would enhance. Feral dogs, wild dogs would enhance. And if suppose a question is asked like this, that can enhancement in the number of leopards or enhancement in the number of tigers can have an impact on the number of vultures? Certainly they do. Because vultures and dogs, feral dogs, wild dogs, they are in a stiff competition to feed up the dead cattle. Stiff competition to feed up the dead cattle. So, when the number of vultures reduced, the number of feral dogs, the number of wild dogs enhanced because they took up the role played by the vultures. That's first thing. They took up the role played by the vultures. Second thing is what? Role played by the vultures. Second thing is what? That it means that food reservoir would be, we have discussed just now that in the Kamrup district of Assam, use of pesticide in the carcasses of animals was used for, the reason behind the diminishing number of vultures. Why? Why was it used in the carcasses of dead cattle? In Kamrup district, what happened? That there was a sudden enhancement in the number of feral dogs, in the number of wild dogs. To check the number of wild dogs, what they started to do is they started to use pesticide in the carcasses of cattle. So that when the feral dogs they feed them, wild dogs they feed them, they would die. But who was responsible for feeding them? Vultures, and their numbers diminished. Clear? So, vultures are in a stiff competition with wild dogs or feral dogs to feed up the dead cattle. That's one thing. The second thing is what? When you talk about leopards and when you talk about vultures, leopards, if their numbers enhance, the number of vultures would reduce. Why? Because leopards are responsible for consuming small animals as their prey. And they do not consume it at once, they kill it, but it won't be consumed by the leopards at one go. So, the remaining part of the animal, the remaining body of the animal would be hidden by the leopard in the trees, which is beyond the visibility of vultures. Like that it would be hidden. So, it means that if suppose enhancement in the number of leopards takes place, the food reservoir of vultures would be getting restricted. The food reservoir of vultures would be getting restricted. Fine. So, that's one thing. And second thing is what? Second thing, when you are talking about the food reservoir of vultures would be getting restricted. And the second thing is that as far as vulture is concerned, vulture also has a connection with tigers, lions. Because lions or tigers, they are the king of the jungles. They eat what? They eat large prey. They are not able to consume it at one go. So, the remaining part is left open in the environment and that would be consumed by the vultures. It would be enhancing their food reservoir. That's one reason that among increasing number of wild dogs, because these dogs, they are also responsible for what? They are also responsible for consuming those animals, dead animals. Vultures would be certainly related, because vultures are in a stiff competition with dogs, wild dogs, to feed up the dead cattle. I'll give you all these three trends, and you will make it. I'll make you right. Don't worry about that. Fine, don't worry about that. So this is the trend. So it means that vultures are in stiff, and I give you the crux now. Vultures are in a stiff competition with feral dogs to feed up the dead cattle. So if the number of vultures reduce, the number of feral dogs would enhance. Why? Because their food reservoir would be enhancing. Vultures are in also connected with what? Leopards, because the leopards, they consume small animals, and the remaining part would be hidden on the trees, which is beyond the visibility of vultures. If the number of leopards, they enhance, certainly the food reservoir of vultures would be restricted, and because of that, what will happen? The number of vultures would reduce. If the number of tigers enhance, the number of vultures would enhance, because their food reservoir would be enhanced. And the most common type of vulture in India is the gyps vulture. So if we talk about the numbers, we can see 40 million was their number initially. Now this number has reduced to what? This number has reduced to 19,000. And among the gyps vulture, there are three types of vulture. One is called as what? One is called as the white-backed vulture, their number is 6,000. Second is called as the long-billed vultures, their number is 12,000. So 18,000 between these two only. And the rarest among them is the slender-billed vulture. Their number happened to be what? Their number happened to be 1,000. So we can see three types of gyps vulture: white-backed, slender-billed, and also the long-billed vultures. So their numbers happen to be different. Clear? Numbers happen to be different. And as far as the vultures are concerned, we can see one initiative has been taken by the Bombay Natural History Society and also the MOEFCC, the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. And this initiative is what? This initiative is that vulture conservation and breeding centers have been established by them through a collaborative effort. And vulture conservation and breeding centers have been established by them at 9 places in India, which includes Pinjar in Haryana, then also Raja Bhatkawa in West Bengal, Rani in Assam, Kerwa in Bhopal, Muta in Ranchi, then also Junagadh in Gujarat, Nandan Kanan in Odisha, Hyderabad, Telangana, and also Beribasi in Gorakhpur Forest Division. So 8 vulture conservation and breeding centers have been established. So all these pertaining to vultures only. Write down a short note on, because we have completed biotic component. So a short note on diminishing number of vultures. Write down diminishing number of vultures. Diminishing number of vultures. Vultures. Roughly about more than 90% of vultures, roughly about more than 90% of vultures, 90% of vultures have vanished, have vanished. The main reason for which is diclofenac. The main reason for which is diclofenac, an anti-inflammatory drug, inflammatory drug used in cattle, an anti-inflammatory drug used in cattle, which passes into the food chain, food chain, and is responsible for, which passes into the food chain and is responsible for kidney failure, and is responsible for kidney failure or renal failure among vultures, or renal failure among vultures. So 90% of them have reduced. Now, that's one reason, and that's the main reason. And we also use diclofenac as a painkiller, but nothing happens to us. Why? Because the immune system of human is developed against diclofenac. It's not in the case of vultures. Clear? It's not in the case of vultures. Anti-inflammatory drug used in cattle passes in the food chain, which is responsible for kidney failure among vultures or renal failure among vultures. That's one thing. There are other reasons behind their diminishing number. There are other reasons behind their diminishing number, which includes loss of habitat, And just cite an example. In the year 2010, due to Nisarga tropical cyclone, habitat loss of vultures took place in Maharashtra. So loss of habitat is another reason. And third thing we can see also, that not only diclofenac and loss of habitat, but another reason for their diminishing number is what? Another reason for their diminishing number is electrocution. Another reason for their diminishing number is electrocution. And fourth, one more reason, and that was electrocution. And fourth, we can see it is easy to remember. See, Great Indian Bustard is another thing. Great Indian Bustard was considered to be, first of all, let me answer your question. Great Indian Bustard was considered for the national bird of India, but it was not selected. Peacock was selected. Presently, Great Indian Bustard is the state bird of Rajasthan. Clear? State bird of Rajasthan. So, bustard and vulture are two different things. Now, how do we remember all these names of so many vulture and conservation centers, Mandeep? You have to remember these names. You can codify these names. That's very easy to remember. If an old man like me can remember, all of you are youngsters of the new generation. You can produce miracles. Fine. So, I don't come with any paper and books at all. So, if I can remember all these names, you can easily do that. And my best wishes with you all. You should remember some. I'm not asking you to remember all the names of national park, all the names of wildlife sanctuary, because I know it's impossible to do so. Impossible. But the selected names should be known to you. Fine, Mandeep. Don't worry. All of you are smart person. You can remember. At least you see. They won't be asking you these names in mains examination. At least by going through it, you can remember that whether these areas are under vulture conservation or breeding centers or not, so that you can select them in objective type questions. That's the purpose. Electrocution, and the last reason that we have discussed is that use of pesticides. Use of pesticide in Kamrup district of Assam to check the feral dogs. But what happened was that these carcasses of animals were consumed by consumed by vultures and they died. Write down use of pesticide. Use of pesticide in carcasses, that's the dead bodies, carcasses of cattle. And we are citing an example of what? Example of Kamrup district. Kamrup district in Assam. Kamrup district in Assam. Use of pesticide in carcasses of cattle, Kamrup district of Assam. Is that clear? Kamrup district of Assam. Pesticide in carcasses of cattle, Kamrup district of Assam. Fine. So all these are the reason behind their diminishing number, but the most prominent reason is what? Diclofenac. Let's move forward. Write down diclofenac has been banned for use in animals in India. Diclofenac has been banned for use in animals in India. Ban for use in animals in India. Has been banned for use in animals in India. Animals in India. And alternates like aclynofenac and alternates like aclynofenac, nimesulide, alternates like aclynofenac, nimesulide, ketoprofen, alternates like aclynofenac, nimesulide, ketoprofen were used, but they also proved detrimental for vultures. But they also proved detrimental for vultures. And why they proved detrimental for vultures? Because aclynofenac and nimesulide converts into diclofenac within hours of their administration. So same impact would be there. And ketoprofen is responsible for enhancing the toxic level in vultures. Write down aclynofenac and nimesulide converts into diclofenac. Diclofenac within hours of their administration, when you are responsible for giving the drugs, within hours of their administration. I repeat, aclynofenac and nimesulide converts into diclofenac within hours of their administration, means drug administration we are talking about. And ketoprofen enhances the toxic level in vultures. And ketoprofen enhances the toxic level in vultures. Clear? So that's how these alternates also prove to be detrimental. And as far as the numbers are concerned, the most common type of vultures in India is the gyps vulture. Their number initially was 40 million, has declined to 19,000 today. Right on the most common type of vulture. The most common type of vulture in India, is the gyps vulture. Initially 40 million gyps vulture were present. Initially 40 million gyps vulture were present. Their number have been reduced to 19,000 today. Their number have been reduced to 19,000 today. Of which 6,000 of which 6,000 is that of 6,000 is that of white-backed gyps vulture, white-backed gyps vulture, 12,000 of long-billed gyps vulture, long-billed gyps vulture, and 1,000 of slender billed gyps vulture, and 1,000 of slender billed gyps vulture. Slender billed gyps vulture. Clear? Fine. 6,000 of white-backed gyps vulture, 12,000 of long-billed gyps vulture, and 1,000 of slender-billed gyps vulture. Three types of gyps vulture we have different, and we have discussed in what number they are present. If suppose they ask you which is the rarest among gyps vulture, the rarest among gyps vulture is what? The slender-billed gyps vulture. The slender-billed gyps vulture. That's the rarest. Gyps vulture is a type of vulture, Ananda, which is present in India, and the most common type of gyps vulture. See, there are many vultures. For example, Himalayan vulture is present in India, but these are very rare. So the most common type of vulture which is present in India, that vulture is called as gyps vulture. Clear? Gyps vulture. And we can see earlier the population was what? Earlier the population was 40 million in India, but has reduced to 19,000. See how many of them have lost their lives. And in gyps vulture, we can see three categories. In gyps vulture, we can see three categories. One is called as what? It is called as white-backed vulture. So the back is white. Long-billed vulture. And second is slender-billed vulture. So three types of vulture. And we can see rarest among them is the slender-billed vulture. Rarest among them is the slender-billed vulture. So that's about gyps vulture in India. But also remember the three trends, that with the diminishing number of vultures, the number of feral dogs would enhance. Why? Because vultures are in stiff competition with feral dogs to feed up the dead cattle. With the number of vultures, with the number of leopards enhancing, the number of vultures would reduce. And you know why? Because the food reservoir of vulture would be restricted. And why so? Because the leopards, they consume small animals, and the part that they consume and the remaining part that is left after consumption would be hidden on the trees beyond the visibility of vulture. Later on, the leopards would be responsible for consuming them. Clear? And tigers, with the enhancement in the number of tigers, the number of vultures would enhance. Why? Because they consume large animals, and after consumption, they leave that in the open. So if they are leaving that in the open, it means that their food reservoir of vulture is getting enhanced. Write down. With the diminishing number of vultures, there is enhancement in the number of feral or wild dogs. There is enhancement in the number of feral or wild dogs. Why? Because their food reservoir enhance. Feral or wild dogs. With enhancement in the number of leopards, the number of vultures would reduce. With enhancement in the number of leopards, the number of vultures would reduce. And with enhancement in the number of tigers, the enhancement in the number of tigers. The number of vultures would enhance, and the reason, you know, we have discussed the reason. The number of vultures would enhance. Clear, fine. And so what initiative has been taken? An initiative has been taken, and that initiative has been taken by Bombay Natural History Society, along with whom? Along with the collaborative effort is with whom? The collaborative effort is with MOEFCC. Write down. The Bombay Natural History Society, the Bombay Natural History Society, that's the oldest NGO in India functioning for the conservation of nature. The Bombay Natural History Society, BNHS, the Bombay Natural History Society, and this is the oldest NGO in India functioning for the conservation of nature, and it has the logo as the hornbill. The Bombay Natural History Society, along with the MOEFCC, that is Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, along with MOEFCC has established vulture conservation and breeding centers. Have established vulture conservation and breeding centers. In short, we can see VC, BCs, vulture conservation and breeding centers. And there's a name given to this vulture conservation and breeding centers. They have been named as what? They have been named as Jatayu. Called Jatayu. So everyone can remember this name. Called Jatayu. These centers have been established. At 9 places in India. So first is what? First is Pinjar. Pinjar is in Haryana. Second is what? Second is Raja Bhatkawa. Raja Bhatkawa is in West Bengal, and it is in the Alipurduar district, West Bengal, Raja Bhatkawa. Then Rani. Rani comes from Assam. Then Kerwa. Kerwa is a vulture conservation and breeding center near Bhopal, Madhya Pradesh. Then Muta. Muta is near Ranchi. That's Jharkhand. It is situated in a place which is called as Ormanjhi, Jharkhand. Then you have Nandankanan. Nandankanan is a very famous zoo in Odisha. Then you have Nandankanan, Junagadh. Junagadh is a very famous place. Also a conflict between India, initially a conflict between thorn issue between India and Pakistan during independence, and that's in Gujarat. Then you have Nandankanan, Odisha, Junagadh, Gujarat. Then also we can see that it is present where? It is present Hyderabad, in Hyderabad also. That's Telangana. And then also there is a place which is called as Berry Basi. Now Berry Basi is where? Berry Basi is in Gorakhpur Forest Division. Gorakhpur Forest Division. So that's all the 9 vulture conservation and breeding centers called Jatayu that has been mentioned. Clear. Very easy to remember the names. See, if you look at this list 2 or 3 times, you can remember these names. Nothing. You have to remember the places only. One place is from West Bengal, you can easily remember that. Raja Bhatkawa. Fine. The others are also very easy. So guys, just go through 2 or 3 times, you will remember these names. Don't worry about that. And even though they won't be asking you directly to write vulture conservation and breeding centers in mains examination, no. These would be questions of preliminary examination. That which among the following is not a vulture conservation and breeding center in India, you can easily pick out. Fine. So it's not necessary to mug up all the names. But this is about. Recently we can see in the Valmiki Tiger Reserve in Bihar, the vultures, the number of vultures enhanced. So there are conservation initiative taken by the government, in which we have mentioned one conservation initiative of the MOEF along with the Bombay Natural History Society. Now see, we have completed the biotic component. Abiotic component we went out to discuss contemporary issues like chemosynthesis. Then also we discussed what is polymetallic nodules, gas hydrates, vulture conservation, breeding centers, and everything about vultures we have discussed. So we have completed that, and along with contemporary inputs. But let's return back to the fundamental terms. An energy component. Energy component of biosphere means what? The main source of energy in biosphere is the sun. Main source of energy in biosphere is the sun. Clear? And we can see that this solar energy is utilized for photosynthesis, and the transference of energy in the food chain is governed by the laws of thermodynamics, that energy is neither created nor destroyed. But I am saying the main source of energy. Why I am not saying the sole source of energy is the sun? I am not saying the sole source of energy is the sun. Why? Because if photosynthesis is performed in biosphere, chemosynthesis is also performed. If photosynthesis is performed in biosphere, chemosynthesis is also performed. That's why the main source of energy is the sun, but not the sole source of energy. Write down energy component. Energy component. The main source of energy in biosphere. The main source of energy in biosphere. Source of energy in biosphere is the sun. The main source of energy in biosphere is the sun. Is the sun, which is utilized for photosynthesis. Main source of energy in biosphere is the sun, which is utilized for photosynthesis. Utilized for photosynthesis. And the transference of energy in the food chain. And the transference of energy in the food chain. In the food chain is governed by. The transference of energy in the food chain is governed by the laws of thermodynamics. Is governed by the laws of thermodynamics. Laws of thermodynamics. That energy is neither created. That energy is neither created. Energy is neither created nor destroyed. Energy is neither created nor destroyed. Now that's about biosphere. It depends upon whatever we have studied. Through that you can write biosphere also. That what is biosphere? It consists of, it is the organic world. It consists of biotic, abiotic, and energy components. A narrow zone of contact between land, water, and air. But with the help of this notes, you can write also what is chemosynthesis, what are diatoms, what are zooxanthellae, and thyle, what is polymetallic nodules, what is gas hydrates, what is vulture conservation, what is breeding centers, what is why the number of vultures have diminished in India, all these things. Clear? Fine. The next term that we are going to pick up is called as ecology. Now, ecology is a term which gets, there are two words involved in ecology, oikos and logos. Oikos means habitat and logos means study. But don't have to write that, break up the terms and write this comes from these words. Disaster comes from dus and aster. Ecology comes from oikos and logos. Not to do these things. There are more logical things which can be written. See, one thing we understand that ecology is nothing but the study of habitat. But the greater implication of ecology is also the mutual interactions which takes place in nature. The mutual interactions which takes place in nature. So I think that it's time up for the break. Fine. And let's take the break, and after that we'll cover up all these terms. Thank you so much.